Our next speaker is Dr. Godfrey Boyle, who's another emeritus professor from the Open University. He specializes in renewable energy, and he has written a number of accessible renewable energy textbooks for the Open University, one called Renewable Energy Power for a Sustainable Future, and he's the current lead educator for the university's free open learn course, Can Renewable Energy Power the World? And he was also the director of the Open University Energy Research Group when I was a student there.
Hello, everybody. I'm Godfrey Boyle. I've told Dave I'm a both good friend and colleague of Dave Elliott, and we decided to try and make our presentations complement each other. So I deliberately am not covering the huge range of renewables that Dave decided to do. But what I'm going to be doing is looking at scenarios, i.e., the scenarios aren't just simple guesses. They're meant to be very well thought out models of what could happen in the future, in this case in the energy domain. Right. Oh, yes, forgive me for plugging something I wrote 40 years ago. I wrote a book called Living on the Sun, which was my first attempt to make a statement on how renewables could run the world. And in the 4 decades since then, renewable energy, I'm very pleased to say, has moved right from the periphery to the mainstream, and it's taken now very seriously indeed by governments and local authorities and NGOs and charities. And various experts, and the ones I'll be showing you, have come up with scenarios. These are very carefully calculated models of what could happen if renewables were developed in particular ways, depending on the assumptions of the scenarios. And I'll be showing you some scenarios for the world, Europe and the UK, deliberately starting to lift our horizon above the UK and starting with the world now. This is from the International Energy Agency, which is a projection right up to 2050, showing how it sees the proportions of energy coming from different energy sources, renewables, coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear. And as you can see, the International Energy Agency, even it, which is a very official and formal body, suggests that renewables are likely to get to nearly 50% of the world's primary energy. That's the energy inherent in at the top end of the energy distribution system. This is one from Greenpeace using rather different assumptions. And Greenpeace, as you can see, sees the proportion of renewable energy having declined at present, but rising up to something like 70% of the world's energy by around 2050, compared to, it sees nuclear declining to a very low level. That's nuclear. This is renewables. This is oil, coal, and natural gas. Sorry, I forgot about the pointer. This is a comparison of world energy scenarios on a shorter time horizon to 2030. One of them is, again, from the International Energy Agency's so-called new policies scenario, and that sees renewables. From this bit is renewables and their projections: hydro, solar PV, wind and nuclear, and other renewables. But in their new, more advanced scenario, they see that renewables reach something like 66% by 2030. That is a very recent horizon. And Greenpeace is even more optimistic here, showing that renewables can take an even bigger share of the world's energy supply by 2030. I'll quickly run through these. This was for moving now from the world scale to Europe. This is from Greenpeace's Energy Revolution and Advanced Energy Revolution scenarios. And at the end, you can see by 2050, they show that energy efficiency can save a lot. Geothermal energy, hydro, wind, solar photovoltaics. And then they've got another even more advanced scenario called the Advanced Energy Revolution scenario, which suggests that renewables can take an even bigger share of the world's energy consumption. This is all energy, not just electricity now. I'll move to other sources in a minute. This is for electricity now, and you can see that, again, by 2050, in their Advanced Energy Revolution scenario, there's wind, hydro, PV, biomass, geothermal, and ocean energy. And so in these scenarios, the renewables can take an even bigger share. This is one for heat. These studies distinguish not just for primary energy, but also electricity, heat, and transport fuel. And this is one for heat. What's happened? Yes, this shows that heat, again, a lot of it could be saved from energy efficiency, but then having saved that energy, a lot can come from hydrogen, electric heating, geothermal energy, and solar heating. And this is one for transport fuels. And again, transport fuels by 2050, a lot of them could come, a lot could be saved by much more efficient vehicles. Then a lot could be supplied through hydrogen, synthetic fuels, and biofuels, and electricity from renewables. So there's a huge potential for, at the European scale, supplying both primary energy, electricity, heat, and transport fuel from renewables in these advanced scenarios from Greenpeace. Now, moving to the narrow scale of the United Kingdom, where we all live and love, this is a scenario from the Department of Energy and Climate Change, the official scenario, you might say, and it sees renewables rising to something like maybe a half or a bit less by 2035. This is a scenario for nuclear, that's the nuclear bit. This is natural gas, that's coal and gas, you can see it's declining. And coal declining remarkably, in fact, by then, so by 2025 or so, as a lot of people do see coal taking a much reduced share of the fuel in the future. This is one for electricity. Something like 40% of electricity could come from renewables by 2030. That's this. Where's it gone? That's it's here and here. Yeah. Then this one is a different. This is from the Department of Business and Industrial Strategy, the UK. And it's a scenario showing that something like 50% of the UK's electricity could come from renewables by 2030. Now, this is the most ambitious of all the scenarios that I'll be talking about. It comes from the people at the Centre for Alternative Technology in Machynlleth. And they've got a very, very high reduction in their scenario for 2030, reducing energy by 60%. In buildings, and cooking, lighting, and appliances, industry, and transport. And they propose, this is what they call the Sankey diagram, the diagram showing where the energy will be sourced from. It will come from solar thermal, ambient heat, wind, wave, and tidal, hydropower, and biomass. And it'll go through various conversion processes, heat pumps, etc., produce heating and hot water, cooking and lighting and appliances, industry, power for transport, including synthetic fuels, etc., etc. And so that's as much as I've got time to cover now, but I'm hoping there'll be plenty of questions. But to show you links to further information, I've been responsible for a new Open University free online course called Can Renewable Energy Power the World? It's an 8-week, 3 hours a week study, which you can easily get through the OU website, and it's free. I used to be, until recently, responsible for our big undergraduate course, T313 Renewable Energy, but my colleague Stephen Peake is now running that. He's the chair of that. And the course textbook, Renewable Energy Power for a Sustainable Future, we've had 3 very successful editions of that, not just for our own students, but it's been very, very widely adopted throughout the UK and indeed the world. And there's a new edition of the book now to be edited by Stephen Peake, my good and friend and colleague, and that's coming out at the end of 2017, and it'll be worth reading, I'm sure. So that's about all I need to say for now. I hope that isn't too much of a whistle-stop tour through the renewables, but you can see where I'm coming from and where renewables are going to. Thank you.
Thank you, Godfrey. Our third speaker is Alistair Cameron.